Okay, 11:30, not 12:30. We've got a really busy schedule, so we're gonna get going now. Want to thank everybody who's here, attending physically, as well as anybody who's out there in Zoom world for attending as well. This is the second of our Green Sanctuary Workshop series. Last month, we told you about what carbon footprint is, how you measure a carbon footprint, and how you can offset an irreducible carbon footprint. But starting today, we're going to be giving you all sorts of suggestions and tips on how you can reduce your carbon footprint in lots of different areas of your life. And we're going to be doing this. Dan, if you could start the first slide, please.
Yeah, sure.
Here we are.
Bugs hard with me.
Hey, wind is a valuable renewable resource.
Sure.
Greta uses it for a reason, yes.
Sure. We're going to be telling stories, sharing stories with you from folks who are members of the congregation or who work for the church. Stories of how they've made adaptations to reduce their carbon footprint. Today, specifically in the transportation sector. And next slide, please. So anybody who's paying attention knows that it's not just climate change. It's not just a climate emergency. It's climate crisis that we are living with already right now. It's not sometime in the future. It's happening right now. It's being manifested in so many different ways. Next slide, please, Dan. And this graph shows carbon dioxide concentrations in the atmosphere over the eons. And you can see that CO2 does vary over time. It changes over time. But it's only relatively recently, really since the industrial age, that you can see at the far right, where the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere is just skyrocketing. And scientists have told us unequivocally that it's this relentless rise of CO2 in the atmosphere which is triggering the climate crisis. Next slide, please, Dan. And it's doing that through the greenhouse effect. On the left side, you see that the greenhouse effect, it's a natural phenomenon. It's happened for eons, long before humans were on the earth. But on the right side, it's human activity, specifically the burning of fossil fuels primarily, that's increased the concentration of these greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide being the one that's most prevalent, that is trapping more and more heat from the sun in our atmosphere and is warming the earth and changing the climate so dramatically. Next slide, please, Dan. So the question we're asking, not just you, but we're asking ourselves, what are we going to do about this? What are you going to do about it? I don't think any of us can take a pass and say it's too big a problem. There's nothing I can do to make a big change. It's only through individual actions that cumulatively we can start turning things around. And it's through these workshops that we're going to be telling you what you can be doing about it. Next slide, please, Dan. Today we start with the transportation sector, and it is of all the different components of greenhouse gases, it is the largest, most significant producer of greenhouse gases. Accounts for about 29% of the U.S. greenhouse gas emissions in 2019. So next slide, please, Dan. To start things off, we're very happy to have with us Tishan Narvaez.
Yes.
Tishan is an employee of our church, and every Sunday, Tishan is responsible for putting out all of the food and beverages that we all enjoy for our social hour after services, and just making sure that things run smoothly. In addition, Tayshawn is a committed rider of electric bikes, and she's going to share with us stories about why she decided to use an electric bike and some of the trials and tribulations of being a bike rider. I will remind all of our speakers today, because a lot of them, in order to move things along, we're going to give you like 6 or 7 minutes or so. I'll keep track of time, but sort of when you're near, a speaker's near the end of their time, I'll stand up just to let you know that you need to wrap up if you haven't already done so, just to try to keep it to an hour. So with no further ado, Tisha, we'd like to welcome you here.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Well, my name is Tishan, and my little story about to get the electric bike is like 4 years ago, I got cancer. So saying that with the medications and stuff, so I start having seizures. I get car sick all the time because of the fumes and stuff like that. So my husband bring my bike. So for some reason, the seizures were gone because I guess because, I had to pay attention to the street. I had to like the air going in my face and stuff like that. So I was seizure free. So I go everywhere with my bike. I go grocery shopping. As you see, I can put together everything. I even put like a cargo thing when I have a big grocery to go. So I go everywhere with my bike. I save money and gas. I drive before, after the seizures, I couldn't drive. But I go appointments. I go everywhere with my bike. I put a lock it out, and that's it. So I don't know, is there any questions that you can, as an electric bike, I can run up to 50 miles without the battery gone. So it take me like 2 hours to charge it. I can go like 30 miles per hour.
Do you
So
stay on the sidewalk, Sean, or do you go on the road?
it depends, because at least over here in West Hartford, they have the bike sites that I can go on the road. I try to go that way if I can, because of the people and stuff like that. If not, then I go to the sidewalks. So. But I try to be careful when I'm in the sidewalks, just because of people and stuff.
And how about in the snow?
That unscrew on that. I'm sorry. I can't.
makes it hard.
It's hard. It's hard. It's hard. It's just raining or it's snowing, and I can't do anything. But the whole year, even if it's cold or it, I just warm up myself and I go. So. Yeah.
Are you scared? You find it scary out there on the road with the cars?
Well, you always like have to be careful. It's not like I'm scared. Well, my husband have another one, and he just have an accident, and it was not even his fault. A car just go fast and hit him. You always have to be careful. You try to be careful, but another people, anybody can just go crazy. It is a little scary when you are like at least in the main road. It's a little scary to go. Yes. Anybody else?
How many miles can this go on a charge?
50
50.
miles.
And where do you charge it? At home?
It's like a little plug
You
thing.
just plug it in like a lamp?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah,
How long does it take to charge?
2 hours. It says completely empty. Will go for 2 hours. Mhm. Yes.
What does a bike like that cost? Just curious.
That one costs almost 1,500.
Okay.
It's a little pricey, but I think for me it's worth it. It's just with my health issues and economy. For me, it's worth it. Mhm.
Do a lot of people ask you on the street, what is that?
Oh yeah, definitely. They stop me all the time. Like I love it, and I try to make it myself because I love to paint. So I did like little painted things in the sides and stuff like that, just to make it mine. That didn't go with the bike. Yes.
Do you have to purchase insurance on that, like you in the car?
No, nothing. It's like a regular bike. No. That you just gotta some state or some cities you had to wear the hat and, the helmet and stuff like that, but no insurance or nothing like that. No. Yes.
Does the bike have a feature to recharge its own battery while it's going downhill, for instance?
No, it's 2 hours. I mean, it's after it's gone, it's gone. You can even charge your phone. That's what you can do. It have like a little USB to charge your phone, but that's it.
Do you miss driving the car?
Yes and no. I mean, I saving a lot of money because, I work, and I had to go back and forth. The most thing that I love when I was starting with the bike in the bus or in the car to go to my job, it was taking me like an hour, 15 minutes. With my bike, it says 20 minutes. It was 20 minutes go and that's it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you always use power with it, or can you have it disconnected from the power?
Okay, the electricity is always gonna help you. You can pedal and you can feel the push. It help you a little push. If you don't want to pedal, you can go by itself too. You just touch the little throttle and you can go by itself. So you don't have to pedal. But it's not fun like that because you want to do some exercise too.
Okay.
Are there any sort of improvements in sort of like support infrastructure here at the church that you would like West Hartford that would make it easier to do more things by bike? Or,
I mean, sometimes you limited what you can do because it's not a car. I cannot just go to the store and get a big thing because it's not gonna, go. But I don't know. I prefer my bike. And seriously prefer to go to the bike, no the car. I mean, I miss the car sometimes. Just it's cold, it's raining, or something, but most of the time, no.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christian.
You can't take free now, so. Thank you for having me. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Tishan. Well, Dan has put himself on the hot seat. Next, welcome Dan Bouchard.
Thank you.
Education, who's going to tell us what it's like downsizing from 2 cars to 1.
Yeah, so we accidentally became a 1-car family in like the end of March. And I kind of like doing it. I guess my story is that it wasn't that hard to do. And now I'm really resistant to buying another vehicle. And there's a few reasons why. I was really surprised to find out actually how easy it was for us. But I have various privileges in my life, like working just 1.5 miles from the church and 3/4 mile from the kids' school. So there's very few places you need to get to in West Hartford that aren't within walking or biking distance or make use of excellent public transportation. So I started thinking about it more like I don't really have an excuse to have a car. We've got, we still have the minivan. My wife uses it to get to work every day, and we coordinate around, other things on the weekends and in the evenings if we need to. But for me, I really like not having a car during the day. And for a lot of the same reasons that Deshaun described, it's definitely more economical. The commute for me is way healthier now. I usually walk. I do ride my bicycle sometimes. It's calming. I get my steps in that way because I do hate to exercise otherwise. But you can still walk around and get places, and that's fine. And that's, I can go to my doctor and say, like, I walk to work. I get 10 miles of walking and just to get to my office each week. So that's pretty good, I think. What else? Let's see. In terms of the economy part about it, I started thinking about the winter and I was like, oh man, I'm probably gonna have to buy a car before it really gets rotten out. But the fact of the matter is I'm not gonna. It's if I need to get a cab or something, I can do that. It's still way cheaper than getting a car, buying a car. And I don't really like contributing to all the noise. Like, I like cars. I've helped restore cars. I've driven some really cool cars. I've worked on cool cars. I've worked with cool cars in the past, but there's not really any joy to be found on the streets these days. They're fat. Like, it's a little scary to ride your bike on the roads. It's just as scary to drive your car for me these days. It's everyone's going too fast and it's loud, and things like the road diet in town are great. I really, really appreciate that. It definitely seems to help. But in general, you know, like Trout Brook, for instance, is a pretty scary road. There's no shoulder and people want to go 50 miles an hour. It's scary in your own car when you go down those like curves over here, I think. So anyway, I also would just tie it back into our last workshop, which was about carbon footprints. And what I discovered, Dave Gonchi gave us that tool, that website to help you calculate your carbon footprint. And it can make baseline assumptions on what your footprint is based on your demographics, where you're from, household income, stuff like that. And when I did that, it's put us at like 80 tons or something a year, something really high. But when I started going in and tweaking it, and one of the things I tweaked was that I told it, we only have one car that goes, maybe 15,000 miles a year or something like that. It dropped right down. And our carbon footprint in the end ended up being like 30 tons or something like that, more what you might expect. So pulling those miles out is just like a really, really easy way to reduce your impact on this planet, I found. I don't know. Does anyone have any questions about that? I don't have a whole lot to say about it, except that I like to walk around this town. It's nice. It's way nicer than driving around.
I got a question. Dan, was the decision an intentional one, or was it the circumstance? How did it come about that you said, okay, we're going to get rid of one of these cars?
It was through circumstance. Most of you know I'm making plans to go do some sailing next year, and I was trying to kind of skate through until then on this car that I had, and it died. It needed some work that I didn't feel like doing, so we ditched it. And it happened, it coincided at a time when my wife was out of work for a little bit after an injury, so I was using, I didn't need to get another car right then because she wasn't driving. And then we were skating kind of right into summertime. She's a teacher, so she didn't need to commute anymore. And the next thing you know, I just don't have a car, and I don't really want one anymore.
Really cool.
Yeah.
It's really nice story.
Cindy.
Yeah, I didn't have a question. I just wanted to mention, we have two next door neighbors who are on adjacent properties. It's a family, two families. One has 4 kids and the other has 3. And they share 3 cars between them.
Oh,
Like each of the mothers has a minivan, the partner around the kids. They're both stay-at-home moms, so they don't have to get to a job. And then there's like one other car that, like, I guess the dads can share. I know one of them does. Nowadays so much of the work is from home, but they've been doing this for several years now. One of them I know we're on Farmington Avenue, and he can take the bus in Hartford. Hartford, sometimes go to take the bus. But yeah, I know she accidentally through a group text ended up sending out a text to everybody that she was looking to use the car. And I want to use the car for this hours today and these hours today. And I was like, oh, my car. And she's like, no, I'm at a ton. But that's, I guess, what they do. They just text each other back and forth, and then schedule
that's very
their car, and it works for them.
That's nice.
Cool.
very interesting.
Mhm.
Cindy.
The only other thing I'd add, just like having stumbled into this on my own, is like I'm not going to give anyone a hard time if they have 4 kids to shuttle around to 4 different appointments every day. Like, I get why people have cars, I really do. But I think you could try it, and you don't need to commit to it for the rest of your life either. I mean, I'm certainly not promising I'm never going to own another car again in my life. It might be something that I need sometime. At this point, I don't, but you could try it and see how it goes for a little while. If you find yourself close to bus lines or enjoying your bicycle experience. Anyway.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dan. See who's is up next. Ah, great. Diane Alexander will share us tips.
Yeah, this will be real quick, but.
What do you say, Diane? Thanks for sharing.
So this last 2 weeks, I was in Houston and my friend Rex that came back with me, we were going to the airport and we called Uber to pick us up and take us to the airport. And we noticed that the rates changed at the time of day, but it was reasonable. And so when I was in the car, I was remembering that we were going to do this session, and also Rex is really considering getting rid of his car. And so I started asking the Uber driver, I said, can you call? And she was really nice. And I said, can you call in and get the same driver each time? And she said, well, we're independent. She said, we're not part of Uber. I pay my own car, I pay my own insurance, I pay my own gas. So we're independent. And if you want my name, you can call me anytime you want. You can have the same, and she could just, yeah. And she said, we can just, I don't know if it's that way here, but it was there. And she said, the Uber drivers, this kind of designed for people to call in and get Uber. But if you're going to be in town, and she said, I'm in the neighborhood, you can just call direct. And, and then you can always get the same Uber driver or have two. So then I was talking to someone in Simsbury, and she doesn't have a car. And she told me that she uses the same Uber. She just calls them. And she has two, but it's not through Uber anymore. So Uber takes, she said Uber takes 65% of the thing and she gets 45. But, if you call direct, you just, she's just your driver. And I never even thought of that, huh? Is that? Well, it costs us, I mean, rather than have a car, go in and park in your car at the airport. If you went, we noticed that if we'd gone a couple of hours earlier, it was only $20 in Houston. That's a big deal. To pay $20 to get to the airport's great because the parking's tremendously expensive. But we went and it was 32 or something there, and he's going to take it going back. But she said that, she was getting her cards printed. She said a lot of them do that in the neighborhood. So I was just passing on that you can meet an Uber driver and just hook up, and then you can let them know when you need a ride and they're in your neighborhood. And she said she even had somebody that was, the planes were canceled and they wanted to go to Austin. That's 3 hours away. That's like going to Maine here, but Houston to Austin's 3 hours. And she said, they called and said, can you take me to Austin? I've got to get that plane, this one was canceled. And she said, let me see what it was worth. It's, and I gave them a price, and she said, I drove them to Austin. And then she said, I ended up getting somebody to come back. So it was good. But she said, I was just like a chauffeur, or something. It's your own thing. So she said, we work out any deal and just try to figure out if it's worth the time. And they gave her a nice tip. She said, it was really worth the trip. So I was just passing on. I was talking to her all the way to the airport and getting her information. And she said, when you call into Uber, it comes up on their screen. And so usually they try to take rides that are in the area. So especially this small city, Houston's huge, so it's more, but if you call in and get an Uber driver and you really like them, you can take their name. And anyway, we're just passing on that little tip.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Diane. Any questions, sir? Okay, thank you, Diane. Tracy Wilson is going to talk about electric bikes as well and her experience getting around town on bikes. Tracy, thanks very much for.
Am I talking with you?
Yeah, is she separate from coming?
You're on your own slide.
Yeah, so you,
We'll talk together.
yeah.
We do that.
Right.
I think we really combine the first two experiences because we're
Exactly.
coming up on almost a year with just having one car.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the beginning of December it was, which was something like yours. Our car passed along to our daughter and then we didn't replace it. Part of it.
But we had bought 2 electric bikes, so we're like, we can use that for in-town errands, and we have the car for long drives.
So I have been riding my bike for a long time. I think I started maybe in the late 1990s, riding my bike to school every day. I was a teacher. And so and by the end of my time teaching, I retired 6 years ago. By the end of my time, I was riding every single day.
Through
I guess there
everything,
were
maybe 3 days a year.
because in my mind, I always thought, well, I like to ski, right? You ski in the winter, and so you dress for skiing, right?
We use
There's a way-
goggles and our ski helmet.
So once it gets cold, we just start wearing our ski helmets, which is, they're great.
They're very warm.
And so I decided that, well, if I could ski, I could ride my bike in the winter. So as long as there wasn't snow on the ground, I did it. So out of 180 days, I probably rode, I don't know,
175, probably.
well,
170 maybe.
yeah. And I just loved it. I mean, I lived like 3 miles from the school, so it was just nice. It was nice in the morning, and then I just looked forward to the ride home. Happened to be downhill on the way home, which is just a really nice experience. And so getting this electric bike, I will say, like Teshawn was really prompted by my being sick and having cancer and not feeling like I could ride my bike, or that I would get stuck somewhere and not have the energy to keep going. And so we decided to buy these, I think, what now it's
It'll
almost
be 2
3
years in January.
I think it's been
3 years in January.
2 or 3 years ago. And so now I'm so excited that we can continue to ride, and like we'll take a ride and I'll just say to Beth, oh, I wouldn't have done that if I didn't have the e-bike.
You just don't
So-
think of hills the same way. Like, you know, it's not like, oh, that'll be too much. You just never think that anymore. So the guy who sold us them was like a 75-year-old guy who on the electric bike, he'd lost like 80 pounds. Like, it's still good exercise, and you can decide on ours how much you want to push. Like, you could pick one where you're pedaling more, or you can pick 6 where you're pedaling less because it's pedal assist. And it does take some getting used to, but to Tracy's skiing point, like, I feel like I'm 9 years old when I'm on a bike. Like, it's just hard to describe how exciting it is to have the wind. Now there's a whole thing, wind therapy, I guess. Like, we've been doing wind therapy for a good decade. And also it really is about dressing. I did today get dressed in a way to show you, like, I might look like I just have pants, but like these shoes are super warm. And then I have socks. We have a bunch of these long socks now. And then I have riding shorts that come to here underneath. So I was super hot in church. But if I ride to work, I just go to the bathroom and pull off the, you know, I'll even put this, I ride in my suit. You know, if I have a suit on for work, I'll ride in my suit. I'll have long johns. I can take them off. We also have these wind pants, but basically, if you dress well, you can ride your bike anytime. And then also I find on the road, like, people ask, are you scared on the road? I'm really not scared on the road at all. For me, it is like skiing. It's like, okay, I'm in charge. I'm on the bike. And I've ridden on the road since I was little, so I'm very confident. And I have found over the past year and a half, the cars are better than they used to be, certainly in West Hartford. And the road diet makes me so happy, because I got a bill passed like 8 years ago to study it. And then it took the town forever to take what the study said and do something. But when Katie asked, is there more the town can do? Yes, like this church, you know, this Green Sanctuary could say to the bike commission, you know, we need more bike lanes, because just think, I know we can't park on Fern Street anymore, but if you're a bike rider, now when you go down Fern Street, it's amazing. And so now you can go Main Street to Fern Street, because you can pick your, like, I ride on Boulevard. It might not be the fastest. I think if I go down Farmington, it's faster to Hartford. I'm about 6.5 miles to work. But the Boulevard's really set up for riding bikes, and it's so fun. And then Hartford's way better than West Hartford. So once you hit the Hartford line, there are way more bike lanes. And so it's really, really well designed. Yep.
Could you, this is the first time I've heard about road diet, so could you just explain what that is?
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know what
So basically, when I was in the legislature, I rode my bike on Main Street and it was awful. And I'm like, we have 3 times more accidents on Main Street than anywhere in town. And wouldn't it be cool if we could logically connect the center with Bishop's Corner? And so I talked to the town manager about it and he was like, well, I don't know. But I
You gotta
gotta,
keep the traffic moving.
and I will
is
say,
what
I-
they keep saying.
I
You
gotta
keep
study,
moving.
like put money in the budget to study it and was lambasted in the media. I mean, I was like WTIC's whipping boy, like $75,000 for a road diet, you know, but then it was very hard, even once it showed this could work, to move it. For some reason, I don't understand still, but anyway, it's moved and now it's supposedly in a trial period. So people need to comment if they like the road diet.
What exactly is it? I
So
don't
it
understand.
was.
Oh, when you drive on Main Street used to be 2 lanes each way, and now it's 3
one.
lanes total,
With a turning
middle
lane in
turn
the
lane,
middle.
which the middle turn lane's ridiculously large. For some reason, they were worried, but anyway, it's meant to make it safer and to make it so you can ride.
Route 4 through Farmington that
And really,
we're always complaining about, but it's actually improved flow.
Mary Ellen Thibodeau was the advocate. Like, I basically did the study and didn't do much else to be an advocate. And then the bike walk group, and Mary Ellen Thibodeau was like this resident who just made it her mission to make sure it happened. She recently passed away, but it was a
No,
great.
but one of the
effort.
things that helped push that was someone like Dan who walked, because it was
Exactly,
dangerous
to
to
walk.
walk on Main
And
Street.
that feeling you're
the-
talking about.
The cars came, like Mary Ellen would walk with a plastic bag and pick up side mirrors and pieces of chrome and like you were walking by people who were just flying, and then people jockeyed to, you know, it's like it was a pass lane. And so, I mean, the more bike lanes there are, the bigger shoulders there are, the better. And I will say, you know, as you bike around town, I don't know if any of you do, but I find the road, I find different pathways, and I'm looking for roads that have recently been paved. And so I'll go out of my way to find those. And with the electric bike, I don't worry that I'm gonna run out of steam. So it's really fun to ride. And I would say something that really changed me as far as my fear of riding came with the bike advocates. There was somebody who rode their bike and they had a trailer, I think, down Main Street when it was 4 lanes, and they had a video and showed what it was like when you took the lane as a biker. Because as a biker, you really have to think, I am a vehicle like a car. And once you have that in your mind, that you're a vehicle like a car and that you need to be treated that way. So I have that yellow jacket there, which is pretty bright, which I wear. And if things get narrow, or like on that, if somebody's parked on the side of the road, you have to go out into the lane with the cars. And if you just think, you know, I'm a car too, I'm not, but.
You do think, you do literally think
Yeah,
that.
then I think there's a mind thing that changes. Like, I have a right to this road too. Roads are not just for cars. And I think that's an important piece. And I, you know, when I see, particularly when I see kids riding on the sidewalk, I just think, you know, I just want them to learn how to ride on the road, because the more bikes on the road, the better. And I also think riding a bike makes you a better driver, because bikers, almost all bikers are also drivers. And it makes you think about how to pass a biker and how to drive in a way that is really good for all people who are using the road. So I think that's an important piece of it.
Yeah,
too.
and we couldn't have gone to 1 car without an electric bike. Like, so we couldn't,
Well, I could,
with,
yeah, I could.
we couldn't have, so the electric bike does enable you to get rid of a car. And that one looks even cooler than ours.
Yeah.
but We like ours.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how do you deal with the rain?
Well, in our bike, have,
Fenders.
well, we have disc brakes, but also the tires are even fatter.
Yeah,
Like that,
I like
you just feel really stable on this bike. The bikes are really heavy. These bikes weigh like 50 pounds. And the battery comes off, the battery weighs about 12 pounds. And so I feel really sturdy on it, but like we have rain pants and that's a rain jacket and
And you have that fender that keeps.
yeah,
the
fenders
tires
are,
from-
fenders are key.
Yeah.
Fenders are key.
But I mean, since I've been retired, I don't do that as much. I don't choose it because I don't have to.
And if there was an awful day, she could drop me at work, you know, if it was a snowy day. And that's why the Uber story is good, because that does give us peace of mind. If she had the car and I rode my bike and something went wrong with the weather, I know I could Uber home. So it does help. So combination of everything helps you get rid of a car and get to work. Yep.
Thank you so much.
Slide, you have to show my bike.
Oh, yeah,
I
good.
really do it. I went to CVS and there's my bike.
She is so dedicated, because she's better than I am, way better.
Well, that's the other thing that could change, is there could be better places to put your bike.
Mhm.
Like I'm always, like I, yeah, like I'm wrapping around there isn't a bike, thing at
Most
that.
places where you shop, it's not good.
No, or it's like way at the other end and you think, well, the advantage of riding a bike is I can be right here.
Free parking.
But usually the biking, like in the center, I don't know where, I'm wrapping it around a light pole.
There's a rack in the library.
Yeah, there's a couple of.
Yes, there is by the library. I think there's one on the south, but
There is,
like,
yeah.
there was a push to like get
A parking
more
place.
parking spots that you could, reconfigure for bike parking, but
They can't charge us though.
there's one is there one on the south?
Yeah, in the corner of Farmington and LaSalle as well. But in general, there's not enough. In order for people to bike, you have to have the infrastructure
Yes.
for them. You have to have the bike racks. You have to have bike lanes like we have out here on Fern, and that are being slowly built in town, but it's an evolving process. It's definitely incomplete, but it's, as Sony mentioned, it's much better than it was just a few years ago.
Yes, but it's just so interesting when the pandemic hit and they changed LaSalle Road to one
I know,
way.
we've been begging.
And they put a bike lane on it.
And
There
we-
was no study, there was no, anything, and
But the
then
restaurants want.
That was the
bam,
restaurant.
it happened.
I
Which
want
is
to,
nice,
I want to
but-
say one other thing, that it's so easy when you're having a serious conversation about global warming and how it helps, right? But it's impossible to describe how fun it is. Like, it really is just so fun. Really, it's just fun.
Just for generally, for this bike discussion, I don't know, you've ridden in Hartford, but in other cities, there's a real conflict between bike riders
Yeah,
and the scooter riders.
yeah.
And the bike riders hate the scooters,
Huh.
because the scooters don't have to follow the same, they act like they don't have to follow the same rules. They're going at a different speed, they're less stable,
Yeah,
so
they're all over the
when you
sidewalk.
talk about building infrastructure
Yeah.
for bikes, be aware that you're also encouraging these other
Yes, it's
forms of
true.
transportation that are more prevalent.
Okay.
Not in West Hartford.
Yeah, but it's,
It-
But it's
Downtown, it's an issue.
but it's still, a scooter is still not a car.
That's correct.
It's still-
That's correct. They have a right
Oh, it's
to.
greener. Oh, yeah, it's greener, but there's.
So ideally, if we're building any infrastructure, we're building it out for all forms of transportation.
Oh, so we got that.
I got
Okay,
two
in
more.
order to keep things moving, busy schedule, we have Linda Scacco. Linda, thank you very much for.
I'll be brief. These other stories were so much more interesting than mine. But so in 2008, we bought a hybrid car. At that point, I don't know that there were electric vehicles. I mean, maybe there were, but we weren't aware of that. And So we bought a Honda because we've had Hondas in our family for a long time. And mostly because we wanted to do less of a carbon footprint, save money on gas. And, we drove around for a while and then we don't remember, I was talking to Ed about it this morning, how long we had it, but we ultimately got rid of that car and we bought in 2017 our second hybrid. It's a Honda Accord. She's named the Brown's Beauty. You'll see her out in the parking lot often. And again, I love going to get gas every 2 or 3 weeks and spending maybe $20. I just love that. So it's just another option. I think at some point, maybe we'll get an electric vehicle, but this is another option. And for people, I mean, I don't know the mechanics of this, but a hybrid vehicle is one which uses gasoline and an electric battery. So,
Is yours a plug-in? Do you plug
no,
it in?
no, it is not a plug-in.
So the battery is only charged when the car's
Yes,
braking or when it's,
yes, yes,
when the gasoline engine is turning.
right, yeah. So, anybody have any questions?
I have just one little anecdote. My elderly mom had a hybrid Prius and she said something so quotable that I think they should advertise with it. She said, I forgot where the gas goes. But she did it so rarely.
infrequently.
She drove the car so rarely, and it was so adorable.
Yeah.
So the lady
Yeah.
said, "What?" But it was actually.
Yeah, I don't get gas very often.
Yeah,
No,
it's a great thing.
so.
When you bought your latest car, was there any conversation about, do you stay with the traditional hybrid versus a plug-in hybrid or an all-electric vehicle?
Because we had had a hybrid Honda before, we just went with that. We didn't really talk much about the other options.
And there were no plug-in hybrids.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
right.
It's new, and now there's like
So many more
we're-
options.
We're looking at possibly buying a new car in the next couple of years, don't want to,
Mhm,
and I'm waiting, you keep putting it off, thinking like,
Mhm.
we'll get to the plug-in, the infrastructure will be there,
mhm,
and delaying it as long as possible.
right.
There's another issue though about moving to electric cars, which is that we fund road repairs and
Yeah.
infrastructure investment with a gasoline tax. And
Mhm.
the states are going to have to figure out a way to collect revenue from people who don't buy gasoline.
That's a nice problem, yes.
It's gonna be a tough.
Yeah, Michael.
Good question, Michael.
As the owner of a plug-in hybrid
Mhm.
and an SUV, nevertheless, just how much, and I have the same car, but spaced 36 months apart, exactly the same car. The notice in mileage is night and day, absolutely night and day. I can't actually go around town on 40, 50 miles with no gasoline at all,
Mhm,
just battery. It is a plug-in, charges very quickly.
mhm.
And if you take it, especially across state lines or whatnot on the highway, this is an SUV and it has the best mileage of any vehicle I've ever owned, but I only had sedans until now. It's absolutely phenomenal.
Mhm.
Once a week, fill up with the wood. I don't use up any gas. I don't.
And how many miles per gallon do you get? Do you know?
It depends how and where I drive.
Yeah.
On the highway, it'll easily push 47 plus.
Yeah.
Easily.
That's what I'm getting to.
And it's a tiny
Mhm.
4-cylinder, supercharged and turbocharged
Mhm,
battery assisted engine. That thing whole, it's got ponies to kill. And
mhm,
we need an SUV in our household for a variety of
Mhm.
totally legitimate reasons.
mhm.
None of them has to do with machismo. None of them. There is a utility vehicle, and it's by far what they
Mhm.
used to have 36 months ago, what they have now.
Yeah.
Same car, night and day.
Well, we get better gas mileage with this 2017 car than we did with the 2008.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
really phenomenal.
Right.
We have a question, Michael?
One more plug-in
hybrids, and my daughter came to my place for a while, and they were house cleaning, so I gave them an SUV, that kind of stuff. So I had a little time to look at them and stuff, and now they have a whole bunch of options. I came down from looking at SUVs, $1,000, hybrids, and then the plugins. And I mentioned this to my son, and they poo-pooed. And then a month later, he bought them. So, months later, I bought one. The same thing, and it's the same idea. It was an SUV plug-in or sedan. I ended up saying, the grandkids are gone. I don't really need the SUV just once in a while. Uber or rent or whatever. So I ended up with a sedan, a lot of trunk room and space for kids in the back, all of that stuff. And I go back and forth at least twice, let's say, to church, just as pure electric, and that go. I need a hybrid because I go to Massachusetts in Canada. So at that point, I don't have to stop somewhere in the middle to charge. But my normal driving is all electric. My only long-term trips are electric for 50 miles up there, 47 miles officially, and then the rest of it is 60 miles. We're not forcing, gas engines, and the gas engine's car or job is to charge the electric is the dominant one, so it always runs that. And so,
All of these options for reducing our carbon footprint when we're driving.
Right. The way I look at it is that if everybody didn't exhaust, fumes, even if the electric companies have to use this, someplace not in the middle of the town kind of stuff, just purely forgetting about the economics of it, just not having the pollution in the concentrated area. And give examples that is in India, in Mumbai, places, they force their three vehicles, which are the dominant things there for carrying things and stuff, to convert from gas to propane. And that just changed quite a bit. And I've heard that now that, the law now forces them to do electric. So for that kind of stuff, it is just the pollution reduction is massive.
One other quick thing I'll say about the advantage to the hybrid or electric, as I notice, I go to the doctor at the Yukon Health Center, and in the parking garage, there are maybe just 3 spots for hybrid vehicles near the handicapped parking, and they should have more of that in other places as well, so that you get a good spot.
Katie, have one.
So just on Friday, I was in the conversation with someone about advocating for more facilities for being able to plug in cars, because that's the future that we're getting to. And it was a discussion where I basically, the response that I got was, well, don't you know that if you look at the emissions, from charging your car, it's just as dirty as if you drove a regular car. And I said, doesn't seem right. And he said, well, then yeah, if it's, if our electricity is coming from burning coal, then it is. And I said, well, I'm gonna go look that up. And so, I went home and did my research and researched a little bit about where our electricity comes from. And, looking at the New England wholesale market for electricity, 97.7% of our electricity comes from sources other than coal and oil. So only 0.3% of our electricity in New England is generated through burning coal and oil. So that refuted that argument. And a large portion of it is natural gas, but the idea is that at the natural gas generating plants, there are scrubbers, there are pollution controls. So I didn't share that information with him. And then I also found that on the EPA website, there's this really cool tool that you can put in the type of car that you have, or your EV. I'm not sure if they had plug-in hybrids as well, but they had all the different kinds of electric vehicles and the year that you bought it. and your zip code, and it will give you the lifetime emissions for your car, including the production of the car and the disposal of your car at the end of its life cycle. So those,
On
you
the
know,
deep website?
EPA. So those arguments about like, well, you know, the resources that go into the battery and then the disposal or recycling of the battery offsets those emissions. This calculator took that into account. And it was, I mean, I compared, you know, some of the older cars or newer cars, and by far in the life cycle of the vehicles, the EV vehicles, of course, still come out ahead. So armed with that data, now I can go back and say, I don't think we had your story quite right.
Data is power.
Happy to share any of those resources.
I think next up, thank you both, everybody, I think is Sabina, who actually has 2 tasks.
You have a totally electric car?
Yes,
All
I
right.
got my first electric car in 2013. And that was a Tesla. And I have to say, if you go to the next slide after that, I have a few really strong reasons why I bought an electric car, but I have to say the second to the last is really, it's so much fun to drive. And the last one saying, I've never met anyone who wanted to go back. So my experience has been that initially, Michael and I would take some pretty adventurous drives. We would go up to Montreal, we would go to New York City, and this was before there were many charging stations. So we had to think, it was an adventure. And that's how I've always looked at it. Like people say, oh, someone was hurt in a Tesla because it was driving for them. And I'm just like, that is stupid. That anyone would have left a Tesla right now in this stage of Tesla development to not to drive on its own. They're just stupid. And they shouldn't have let that person have that car because it is so dangerous. I let it go drive on its own when I'm going on 91, I'm going north, and it's beautiful. I hit the blinker, it changes lanes for me. It notices when someone's stopping ahead, I'm too close to a truck. I mean, the bells and whistles, but I would have gotten into so many accidents with death as the resultant impact because it is not at that stage yet. So what else? I have to say that one thing also I call adventure, but I don't mind stopping at the supercharger and I'll stop for an hour. And it's my time to read the stuff that I have been avoiding. And it's just like, it's what I do. And I read it and I'm like feeling so good after I've been at a supercharger. So that takes about an hour to go from 0 to 350 miles charged. And so that's my range. I would say if you are buying an electric vehicle, it goes up in price. If you get you should get the electric car with the most range. That's one of the most important things when you're buying an electric car, because some people think of an electric car, well, this will be our around town car. No. I mean, I go to Boston, I go to Vermont, I go everything we do in the Tesla, and there's superchargers everywhere. Now, we'll have to do quite a bit of work on building out the infrastructure if people are not going to use the Tesla superchargers. I don't know anything about that, but it's highly important that there's more than just these chargers that we were talking about in the parking lots. That, will be a night time of charging. So they have to be high-speed chargers on the highways and byways for us to really have a realistic future with electric. And the last thing I'll say is legislation here in Connecticut in 2017 said that there was a certain amount that we needed to reduce our carbon footprint, the state's carbon footprint by 2030, and it's 45% decrease by 2030. That's the law. In order to hit that goal, we have to have 500,000 electric cars in Connecticut by 2030. We have 7,000. 300,000, 7,000. So, you know, people talk about patriotism. I think this is climatism. You know, you get an electric car, ooh, we have to supercharge for an hour. Ooh, you know, I'm a little bit scared of not hitting New York City with enough charge. Well, get over it. You know, that's how I feel. Like, just change your mind about that. And it's easy. It's easy. And you learn so much about how much electricity you use when you drive, and you become a much gentler driver because it gives you all this information. So it's really lovely. And then I probably have talked too much. The point, I think, with number 2 is the most important thing I wanted to point out. If you would go back to the map, that people say, I can't afford an electric car. And this is from the New York Times, and I can give you the source. And you can go on the y-axis, you're going with greenhouse gases emissions. And on the right, you're going by price. And so you can see that the cars that are comparable would be, and I can't see it.
What do the colors represent? What's yellow?
Yellow's electric at the bottom. The reddish one is hybrid and plug-in vehicles. Above that, the green blob is diesels. And the big gray one is, I guess, just all gas powered cars. So down below, you have the Honda Civic, and up top, you've got the Sequoia.
Right. So basically right now, a sedan, electric sedan is comparable in price if you take in consideration maintenance, you know, oil changes. It's not a combustion engine, so you don't have all those moving parts. So the maintenance is nothing. I've been down and gotten maintenance 2 or 3 times over, what is it now, 8 years. But you have to take in consideration the maintenance, and so forth. So.
And so can I ask you a question about the cost? So
yeah,
what's going to happen with charging costs? Because now, like, you can pull up, like, we've had an electric car, and you can just charge it wherever charge. But at some point, these public chargers are going to have to charge us. How are they going to work that out?
I think what they'll do is they'll have your identity, like a credit card, and they know who you are, and they know they can pick up the signal also from the car. That's what they do with a supercharger. They charge based on your car, and that they hook it up with your credit
But they
card.
don't charge you at the Tesla superchargers.
They don't if you bought a car before 2017.
Okay.
It's free.
And what about after?
After that, they charge.
Okay, but it's probably still
It's
less than
minimal,
that.
minimal, it's much less.
Yeah.
Much more.
Yeah, well, because you figure they have to support this infrastructure.
Can you go to the next slide? There's one other thing that is important here. No, one more back there. Nope.
Where am I going?
I don't know. There. So number 3, electricity is much cheaper than gas. Filling up with electricity costs 1.06 per e-gallon compared to 360. I'm not sure what it is right now per gallon for regular gasoline.
But you don't go to the gas station.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, that's the difference. So when you take all that in consideration, cost of your fuel, the fact that you don't have maintenance and oil changes, it's pretty comparable. Now, it's not comparable yet for SUVs. It'll take another 3 years for prices to be comparable.
When you take into consideration and add a solar array that you can utilize to charge, that number becomes even less.
Right.
And we do have a solar array.
Yeah. So what we did first is with the energy efficiency. You get an audit and you get everything as efficient as you can in your house. You have insulation blown in for free. They change your light bulbs, whatever. And then you can buy some solar, and solar is cheaper than gas and oil now. And then you buy your Tesla.
You want to take a couple minutes to talk about TCI?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I just wanted to alert everybody, we're talking right now about what we personally can do. And right now in the legislature, there is it's not quite a bill, but it's
it's legislation that has to pass something called the Transportation and Climate Initiative. And this could have a huge impact, the biggest climate bill for a long, long time that's come through. And the whole point of it is to reduce emissions in the transportation sector. And as Ed said rightly, that nationally, transportation is 29% of all the CO2. But here in Connecticut, it's 39%. And of that 39% of the whole pie is from transportation. Within that, 69% is from cars and trucks. So it's going right after cars and trucks and saying, what can we do? And one of the things is incentives to buy an electric car, incentives to switch over school buses to electric vehicles, incentives to put in more bike lanes and ways that people don't have to transport, better internet connection for rural or inner city people that don't have great connections so that they can work from home and don't have to flood. So within, the last one says here, it will create $1 billion for Connecticut in the next 10 years. And so half of that money would be earmarked for areas that are disadvantaged, that maybe are right next to 95 or 84. These kids in Hartford and New Haven have, those two cities are the top few cities in the nation for asthma and for pollution in the air. So we get also, we're kind of the tailpipe of what happens in Ohio and so forth, but also our emissions from transportation is very, very large. And the fact that it's 50% of the money coming in will be toward disadvantaged people, I think there's a lot of buy-in.
But Senator Rooney's the one blocking it.
Right, so
So it
here's
makes no
what we all
sense.
want you to do. If you have a friend in New Haven or Hamden or that,
Hamden and-
we'd like you to call them and just say, would you please send the following QR code? I mean, use the following QR code. Here, you just put your phone up. You take a picture like you normally do, but all of a sudden it brings you to the website that I want you to go to. Fill it out, and then it'll go directly to your senator, legislator. And if you could just send this QR code then also to your friends in New Haven. And then they could call Lumi, who is the, what do they call it?
He's the Senate president.
Pro tempore senator,
Senate.
who determines whether this bill comes up for vote.
He and the governor are sort of like this on it. And he's
Right,
not letting it go. He wants something else. We don't know what.
Right. So this is the little things we can do.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
you just take a picture of it. It'll take you right to the website. You fill it out and you send it in for yourself. And then you send this same QR code to as many people you know in New Haven to get Looney to bring this up for legislation, for vote. So those are my comments about the TCI. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, I guess I got the hot seat. So, next slide, please, Dan. Oh yeah, first, just a quick shout out for the Nissan Leaf. It's a poor man's Tesla. It has doesn't have the range of the Tesla, but it has a pretty significant range. We're charging it right here at our house. And if you plan properly, you can travel anywhere throughout Connecticut and beyond. We've got up into southern Vermont, over into the Hudson Valley very easily on a charge. So it's terrific and it's completely emissions free. So check it out. But really what I want to talk about is what I call gentle driving. It's my term. And what is gentle driving? Well, it's quite, and it's simple as it's simply driving at the speed limit, plus a few other things like stopping at intersections rather than rolling through them, not avoiding jackrabbit starts and accelerating slowly. but why am I doing these things? Why have I been a gentle driver for a number of years? Dan, next slide, please. There are probably three reasons why I drive gently. You know, if you live in West Hartford, you know that West Hartford has a huge speeding problem on the roads. This is Fern Street. This is the elementary school just east of the church on Fern Street. And this summer, I stood out by this speed monitor just to track what people were driving going through. This is a school zone. This is a school zone, and it's posted 25. It's right there. Cars were going by. This is the fastest I recorded, 43 miles an hour. And the driver, when presented with that flashing 43, they didn't slow down one bit. They went right through that school zone at 43. And just about everybody who went through at the time, 5 minutes I was there, was above the speed limit, and they didn't slow down, and even one presented with it. We've got a huge speeding problem in West Hartford. It's been that way for many years. Next slide, please. So there's at least three reasons why I drive gently. The faster you drive, the less reaction time you have available to you. Corollary is the slower you drive, the more reaction time you have. And you know, when you drive, you're constantly responding to a changing environment. You have cars that are doing funky things. You have people crossing the street. You have bicyclists. You have children who are, you know, maybe chasing a ball out on the street. The faster you're driving, the less time you have to respond and avoid an accident with any of those users of the road. Next slide, please. You know, with regard to our carbon footprint, there's a sweet spot somewhere between about 30 to about 55 miles per hour where our fuel efficiency is maximized. That's the plateau on that curve. It drops off at slower speeds as well as faster speeds. So particularly when you're out on the highway, when you're getting up to 65, 70, 75, it's not showing, you don't see it in your car, but your fuel efficiency is dropping, your carbon footprint is rising dramatically. So if you stay at the speed limit, you're more likely at that plateau, the most efficient use of the gasoline. Next slide, please. This one's really important to me. This is an aerial view of West Hartford, much of West Hartford. And you know, when you look at it from a bird's eye view, you realize this is a community. It's not a speedway, but so many people treat the roads in town as a speedway. And when I look at this, you know, I'm reminded we live here. People live all along these roads that people are speeding along, okay? And anybody who lives on a street that's, you know, where there are people are driving fast is impacted by it in one way or another, either directly or indirectly. It affects the quality of life. It affects the livability of those communities. So when I'm driving gently, you know, these are the people that I'm thinking about, you know, when I'm driving at the speed limit, the communities I'm driving through. Now, I have to tell you, I'm going to ask you at the end, all of you to join me as gentle drivers, but I have to tell you, not everybody appreciates gentle drivers. You need to be prepared if you're going to drive gently for the reaction that some people are going to have. And, you know, I've gotten, you know, I think I've seen all of these people out on the roads as I'm driving gently, especially where, you know, they're forced to drive the speed limit. By the way, which is the law. This is what we all learned in driver's ed. Everybody seems to have forgotten it, but it is the law. So I'm driving within the law. And if people behind me, you know, feel that you know, I'm upsetting their God-given right to go 55 miles an hour in a residential zone, what I'm really thinking about is the communities I'm driving through, not the people behind me. I never react to somebody who's beeping at me or yelling at me. You know, I just kind of say in my mind, have a nice day, you know, but I will not be forced to speed at the, you know, at the rate that they drive. And so, but I don't have an explanation, nothing on my car, or I can't explain to people why I'm doing what I'm doing. So Diane very graciously created a bumper sticker, which is, it's not an admonishment. I'm not admonishing people to drive gently. I'm just simply explains what I'm doing. I'm driving gently for my planet and for my community. And I'm going to put it proudly on our two cars. And I invite all of you to join me as gentle drivers. You can make that commitment by filling out a commitment label at the back table, and you'll get a bumper sticker if you commit to be a gentle driver. And I would love nothing more than drive around town and to see other people driving gently like me and, proclaiming it to the community. Okay. So last slide, please, Dan. Please join me, drive gently, and for the planet and for the community. And last slide, we have these 5 commitments that we ask you to consider making, all of which are germane to what we presented today. Try to bike instead of using a car whenever possible. If you can afford it and you need a new car, consider an electric or certainly a hybrid. You may consider downsizing one car. Certainly, it takes nothing to ask your state legislators to support CCI and as well to commit to being a gentle driver. So to wrap things up, we'll ask you once again, as we did last month, to go to the back, sign a commitment label. We're going to post them all in a portico, and please, embrace us and reduce your footprint. Yeah.